Hello there, dear friends, and welcome once again to the Relaxed Fantasy Review. Today, we're going to be talking about spellcasting, and specifically, we're going to be talking about the Ranger. The Ranger is known for their nature power, their ability to work with both their martial and their nature magic, but they're half-casters. And half-casters have that unfortunate curse where they don't learn the higher level spells until much, much later. 5th level spells are granted to most spellcasters at 9th level, but Rangers don't get them until level 17, which is when other casters are getting their 9th level spells. Significantly more powerful, but the half-casters to have one special thing, and that is that they have unique spells that help scale them faster, meaning that there are some 5th level spells that Rangers can learn which stand out even at this highest tier of play. I've got a top 5 list here of spells that any Ranger should consider. Starting off with number 5 is Commune with Nature. This is a classic druid spell where you become one with the nature spirits, and anywhere within 3 miles of you, you can detect a bunch of stuff. You can detect sources of water, or groves of trees, or minerals, or plant life. You can detect where cities or towns or buildings are. If there's any large-scale monsters like Fae, or undead, or fiends, or any other influences from the outside world. It's just a great information gathering tool that has a 3-mile radius. So, yeah, you can gather the information about where that demon lord is you're hunting, no problem. It also does work underground with a 300-foot radius as a limitation. Doesn't work in cities, but you know, it makes sense if you're communing with nature. Overall, it's a wonderful spell, and I think it's really, really good for investigation purposes and information gathering. Now, for number 4, we have the spell Conjure Volley. This harkens to the bow-wielding classic ranger archetype. In this case, it's a little more like a comic book, though, where the ranger takes an arrow or a throwable weapon, whatever, it can be any sort of ranged weapon, and fires it into the air, and then chooses a spot. That ammunition then bursts into hundreds of the ammunition, creating an area of effect. Any creature in a 40-foot radius, so this is a huge spell, has to make a dex save or take 8d8 of the weapon's damage. This is especially potent if you're wielding a magic weapon because the spell specifically says that it mimics the damage type of the weapon, which is usually going to be piercing because you're using a bow. But if you have a magical bow, then it's magical piercing. So this is a fantastic area of effect spell to just clear out an entire space, an entire encounter, before you even begin to fight. And there's nothing cooler than the idea of shooting an arrow into the sky and suddenly it becomes 1,000 arrows. That's just such an awesome image that I think any ranger would love to do. Of course, it's just one big AoE, but what a power. However, there is one other archery-based ranger spell, which is often cited as the greatest ranger spell out there, Swift Quiver. You take a quiver, or some other ammunition-holding object, and you bonus action cast Swift Quiver. From then on, you can, as a bonus action, fire 2 arrows from that quiver. What this means is that a ranger who normally has to spend their action making 2 shots with their bow, suddenly can make 2 shots with their bonus action, and it doesn't even require you take the attack action. So you could use your action to do something else if you wanted to, but if you really wanted to lay down the fire, you could use your action to fire 2 shots with extra attack, and your bonus action to fire 2 more. This doubles your combat effectiveness, meaning that Swift Quiver is arguably the greatest ranged spell for a bow-wielding ranger. And in the player's handbook, it most definitely was the most powerful ranger spell. But then came Xanathar's Guide to Everything, giving us some expansion on the powers of the Ranger. They gave us the Gloomstalker, obviously, but it also gave us two more spells, and they are absolutely the top two for the Ranger. First of all, at number 2 is Steel Wind Strike. Now, I will caveat and say that this is not something that a bow wielding ranger can use because it does require using a melee weapon. But it doesn't require that you be proficient with that weapon in any capacity. You probably will want to be. But it's meant mostly for melee based rangers, but its power is so phenomenal that it bears talking about. You cast Steel Wind Strike, and you can target up to 5 creatures within 30 feet of you. So this is a crowd clearer. When you do this, you will make a melee attack against each one. Notice that these creatures could all be 30 feet from you. You're going to literally pop over and attack them with a melee attack, and then another creature with a melee attack, and then another creature. This is like the ultimate Misty Step hit, except you can do it to 5 creatures at once. If you hit them, you will deal 6d10 force damage. 6d10 force damage is a lot of damage. That is an average, if you take the dice averages, of 33 damage per creature. And with 5 creatures, that's over 150 damage in one hit. Force damage, I might add. Using a melee attack. This isn't a spell save DC. This isn't a spell attack, so you don't need to worry about your wisdom modifier. This is just melee attacks with your weapon. This is phenomenally powerful, and at the end of the spell, you can appear next to any of the 5 creatures you targeted. So this is quite possibly one of the greatest martial spells. I can imagine any fighter or paladin or barbarian wanting this, but the ranger got it. It gives them that final tier, I'm going to clear the battlefield using melee sort of attacks. It honestly feels very similar to the paladin's destructive wave, except instead of an AoE, it's a directed attack. And instead of dealing thunder and radiant and necrotic damage, it deals force damage, which actually makes it a little better. But I digress. The final spell on the Ranger's list, and this is one that I also gave high marks because the Druid gets it too, is the Wrath of Nature, also in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. This is a concentration spell that you use for 1 minute, and it gives you control in a 60-foot radius of all the nature around you. First of all the terrain becomes difficult terrain, so that's helpful. You can tell it that your enemies do not get to pass. Then, at the start of your turn, any creature that is an enemy that is within 10 feet of a tree must make a dex save or take 46 slashing damage. So that's a lot of damage just at the start of your turn, no action required. Then, as a bonus action, during your concentration, you can hurl a rock from the ground at a specific enemy. You make an attack roll. If you hit, then you will do the damage and they make a save or they fall prone. So that's great. And then finally, at the end of your turn, you can designate a creature to make a strength save, and if they fail it, they get restrained by the plants. So the plants go nuts, overgrowing everything. The trees attack, the rocks attack, the grass starts to grab onto people. This literally turns the martial bow-wielding ranger into the master of nature, controlling everything. And what's more thematic than a ranger calling out to the nature spirits at the end, near the end of a campaign, summoning the trees, rocks, and plants themselves to fight for you? You wouldn't even have to do anything. I mean, you could, because all you have to do is maintain your concentration and use your bonus action after this. You want to start firing your bow into the crazy nature fiasco that's around you, go for it. But you don't have to. You can just stand back and watch as nature itself tears your enemies apart. Nothing more cool, nothing more thematic for the Nature Ranger, and that is why it takes the #1 spot. Wrath of Nature is absolutely an S tier spell and deserves notice from anyone who can take it. This has been the Relaxed Fantasy Review. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe down below, and keep your eyes peeled for more spellcasting reviews coming down the line soon. Have a good one, my friends.